Good evening. My name is Jay Shelfer. I'm the president of the PAC board, and I'm welcoming you to the June PAC board meeting held every month. And I welcome the attendance of residents and interested bystanders. In that stead, I'd like to call for the approval of the final agenda.
So move.
A second. Okay, any additions or comments? Call for approval. All in favor? So 5-0. Thank you very much. And now public comment for those items that aren't on the agenda, but residents or interested observers would like to say anything. I'd like to limit this to 3 minutes throughout the program, throughout the meeting. So is there any residents that would like to have something to say?
I would. It's Ellen Jane.
Ellen Jade. Okay, Ellen. Hi,
Yeah.
Ellen.
Should I just, it's a correction to the minutes, so should I just bring it up at the time when you're trying to approve the minutes?
Correct.
All right. Never mind.
Okay. So again, this is the time for public comment. If there's any residents that would like to have something to advise the board, now is the time to do it.
Okay, well, I do have something, but I think I probably better not bring it up because I don't want to irritate Matt. It's about neighbor stuff, so I don't know where would be the forum for that, about a safety issue. So,
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
yeah.
Any other comments? Okay, so I'd like to move on to the consent calendar, and that is for the calling for the approval of the May 3rd meeting.
I move we approve the minutes from May 3.
A second for that?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Vic. Any comments? Carol Joy?
Yes, I do. There are several corrections. I'm going to say all of them so that they are on the record, particularly the recording, because I do not think that the recording secretary has joined the meeting yet. And I want this all on the recording. So in the first place, when the recording secretary and I were going over these, she made a global correction of Ellen Jane Schultz's name, and somehow it didn't get made. So every time Ellen Jane's name should be in here, it is not. So that's most of the corrections, but I'm going to go ahead and say where they are. So starting on page 2, under public comments, the bullet point, it should start with Ellen Jane Schultz addressed traffic calming issues. Later in that paragraph, right after it says, however, Matt has not heard from him to date, it should say Ellen Jane also expressed concerns, etc. Then further in that paragraph, they do not enforce it, and then it should say Ellen Jane is also concerned, etc. Going on page 4, same thing. The paragraph after the one that starts with Jay stated, the next paragraph down, it should say Ellen Jane stated that she has an issue, etc. Then right after the wording that adjacent home, the next sentence should start with Ellen Jane. Then after other areas of Marin, the next sentence should start also Ellen Jane had helped put up the fence. And the next sentence should start with Ellen Jane feels she is not being heard. Going on. Sorry, I know this is tedious, but I just want to make sure that every single instance gets corrected. On page 6, a word got omitted. The second to the last paragraph that starts a mobile home wildfire safety segment, that sentence ends in 2 or 3. It should say in 2 or 3 weeks. So just adding that word. On page 7, just before the Marvell report, the paragraph that starts Irma. Irma is misspelled. It should be ERMA. And those are all the corrections I have. So I would move that those corrections be made. So I'm moving that the agenda be so
The
correct.
minutes.
I'm
Amended.
sorry. The minutes be corrected as previously stated, as I stated.
Carol Joy, should we wait until next time to see those corrections?
No, we can approve them as corrected, and then they will be corrected and sent out with these.
Well, we do appreciate the time and effort you put into reviewing this. Would it be worthwhile for you also to just email to the recording secretary your notes?
Yeah, she and I have worked together. We do this by telephone. It's just that I didn't make that one last pass after our last telephone conversation. So I should have proofread it one more time, and I didn't. So my mistake.
Okay, so the consent calendar, we can approve the minutes with these subsequent, okay.
So the motion is amended to approve them as with these corrections.
Any other additions or corrections? Okay,
Thank you, Carol Joy.
Call for a vote. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to reports. I'd like to call on Matt Greenberg to report on maintenance and capital. Someone has something on in the background, so would you be mindful of that? And if you are unmuted, please be careful that you're not bleeding in.
It
Matt?
appears to be an echo in Steve's computer.
There you go. Thanks, Steve. Matt?
Okay, yeah, good evening, Matt Greenberg, General Manager. We've started our defensible space work. We've got the majority of all the interior common areas cut and cleaned of all dry material. The entrance to the club from the front pillars all the way in, both sides of the street. You can generally get about 30 feet clearance back there, and they've done a good job. Tomorrow, I believe they'll be starting down below Club View, and we're going to get 100 feet out there. After that, it'll continue to the perimeter up against all the resident fences, including removing all poison oak, any dry material. We were hoping that, I'm glad that it did rain, but the goats came a little early this year, so it's hard to tell how far back I'm gonna have these guys cut because some of that grass is already to grow back.
In that regard, Matt, when they cut Club View, there's a lot of grass out there. Are they going to attempt to pick any of that up, or is it just going to lay on the ground?
They're just going to cut it. They won't pick it up. They'll pick up anything that is cut directly behind the resident homes and the fences. But as far as the grass, it's never been picked up. It dries up fairly quickly. But it'll be a pretty big job to pick it all up. I don't think
The hazard with the dry grass is the flame height, and the flame height is a function of the fuel height. So when the fuel height is below 4 inches, the flame height is also very low, and also the heat. So That's the standard practice, is to cut the grass and leave it low.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, John. I didn't realize that. I've started with some building maintenance. There's a lot of faded paint. The woodpeckers have been busy over the winter on the east side of the building, and they've already got holes through the siding. So we've got somebody repairing and repainting. We're going to be painting the entrance to the ballroom, the peeling doors, and the railing that is above the stairway that leads downstairs to the billiard room is going to be cleaned and painted. And we've been doing prep today for the electrical maintenance that's going to happen tomorrow. We notified everybody that there's going to be an electrical shutdown, and I've sent out several robocalls to back that up. But all the transformers and the main switch station are going to have quite a bit of work done. We've got 2 companies coming in that'll be working at the same time. One of the companies is specifically for electrical oil service, and the other company, we're replacing the majority of all the ground rods, the ground wire, all the bolts, lugs, so that we can prepare to provide reliable power throughout the summer in case there's any brownouts in Lucas Valley or any other problems like that. Other than that, I had a meeting today with Wilhelm Tree Service, so I'm going to be hiring to do 100-foot defensible space. We'll have enough money for 2 separate areas this year. We're all down wood material, all poison oak. They'll leave some stands of brush for the small quail and different birds and turkeys, but the majority of all material, all the limbs of the trees will be raised 13 feet above grade. And so all that down, there's literally hundreds of limbs that are down from oak trees that are all going to be removed from the property. It's a big outfit. We'll have several 12-man teams working at the same time. And that's going to start around the 20th of this month or possibly the 1st of July. It depends on schedules.
Matt, could you make sure that the tree workers leave at least a couple of the bear snags that are up on the hill for the owls?
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet.
Great.
Other than that, it's just the beginning of the season where I get a lot of work done. And I don't really have any more than that. We did fix one actually pretty good water leak. We had Marin H2O out the other day. And that was something scheduled that I talked to you about last meeting. And I have noticed that our water usage is still below what it was a year ago. Our last reading was May 19th. And we've been using approximately 37,800 gallons per day. Last year at the same time, we were using about 45,000 gallons per day. It's an average about 7,000 gallons less per day now. And I attribute that to residents using more micro irrigation and a lot of these leaks starting to get repaired that aren't running 24 hours a day. And there are more. So I guess that would conclude my report unless any of the board has questions.
Matt, I'd just like to say that the crew that did the clearing along the Marin Valley Drive at the park entrance did a stellar job. It looks excellent.
Yeah, and in those areas, I asked them to rake and clean everything up because it's the entrance that everybody sees when they first drive in, and it does look good.
Yeah.
Any
Thanks
other
for the
comments?
work on the,
Oh,
thanks
yeah.
for the work on the water, Matt. Your persistence is appreciated.
You're welcome. It'll be ongoing, but a lot of the wet gutters that people have seen for a long time are dry because we've located the breaks and the infrastructure that were leaking, and they're hard to find. But we're still working on it.
Any other questions from the board? Peggy Hill, resident, longtime PAC member.
Yes. I'm just kind of wondering about some of the residents' homes where tall grasses and weeds and all are growing, probably about 1/5 of the homes here. And our fund, the yard maintenance fund, just can't take care of it all. And is there any way that we can request that neighbors are responsible for cleaning up their homes? Can we have liens against the homes? It just seems like something should be done. Neat and clean homes are just definitely more fire safe than yards
Some of
with
the
lots of
yards,
grasses.
yeah, some of the yards that are in plain sight I'm aware of, and we're just gonna have them cut. It really is a resident responsibility. But some of those residents are either infirm or they're very low income, and their neighbors are concerned. A lot of the neighbors have real pride of ownership, and then you have 2-foot weeds. So we're just gonna have our guys come through and clean that and just call it good. It seems to be something that's beginning to be kind of a standard practice each year. But you know, some of the yards are big or they're steep. And even though that some of the residents probably could do it, it's hard, you know, and I kind of feel that it's better just to get it done and move forward. So I know some of the ones that you're thinking about, and they'll be cleaned here soon.
Good.
Yeah, especially with labor costs these days. It's not a big incentive, labor costs, and then the cost of living is up substantially. So it tends to drop down a notch or two on people's priorities. And so, yeah, I'm trying to figure out some way to address that as well.
Is there any liability in terms of us going on to a leaseholder's property and cleaning the grass?
I think there's always a potential for something, but everybody that we use is insured and we're indemnified and called out as additionally insured. And the lots that are the rental lots, you know, our other option is to send the resident a 14-day notice, and if they don't clean it up, then we can clean it and charge them. But most of those residents can't do it for one reason or another, and I don't think that charging an infirm resident or somebody low income and then going after them in court for, you know, $100 is a very positive move.
Just to be a little bit more specific, and liability in the sense that we're going on to someone who is leasing a property. Do we need to have their permission to do so, or can we just go ahead and do it?
No, we can do it. They're not doing it. Most of the people that have yards that need help, it's a yearly thing that I've talked with them about, and you know, they just won't do it. They, for one reason or another, they won't. So we can either leave them and not do it, or, you know, the ones that are on a street corner or a large area or steep area that is nothing but grass. My feelings are that we just send the crew through that, you know, we got 5 guys working full time. They can cut stuff like that down real quick.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that, because as I see it, there's an existential liability for not doing it.
Yeah, there could be a cigarette butt and the home catches fire, it burns the home above there, and we could have spent a very small amount of money to prevent that from happening, and it makes more sense to me.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, let's move on to Steve Flosher and his treasury report.
Okay, the PAC petty cash account balance is the same as it has been for the last 4 or 5 months, $2,725. That money is just there in case we need to spend some money then, and Matt is not available to use the MVMCC accounts. So we rarely spend that money. The PAC annual budget of 4,000, which Matt does manage, of that we have spent $2,625. So it looks like we probably won't spend all of our budget this year. We did not have to spend money on an election. But, you know, we are an enterprise entity, enterprise, I forget the name of it right now. And which means we're a separate account of the city. So anything we don't spend, it doesn't go back to the city. It goes into our reserves. So if we don't spend it, we save it. So we don't feel the need to spend the maximum of every line item. So I'm comfortable with that. Regarding the Finance Committee report, the DSC calculation is 1.97, just short of 2.0. But once again, that's because we are spending on tree trimming and brush removal was skewed towards the beginning of our fiscal year. If we spread that out evenly, our DSCR is 2.06. And once again, it's still my understanding that the city will be using our reserves to pay off that loan, and the DSCR will no longer be a factor in the future. That hasn't quite happened yet. That's the end of my report. Any questions?
John?
Is there any indication or, you know, calendar objective date for actually paying down our loan?
That's a question for Jay or Matt.
Yeah.
The conversations that I've had with the city staff indicate that after the budget is approval, they'll be moving on to going into the retiring of the debt. At the last 2x2 meeting, we asked the finance person from the city to look into whether there was any penalties or prepayment of it, and therefore any problems with paying it any time during the period of the loan. And we'll probably get an answer to that at the June 20th 2x2 meeting, which we'll be having later this month. I don't see any, you know, having seen loans before, I don't think there's going to be any problem to that. You muted yourself, Steve. There you go.
I don't think there is either, but I do have a full copy of the loan agreement, and I'll look at it to see if there's an underpayment penalty, early payment penalty.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
You have that with you in New York?
On his computer.
Oh, it's on your computer. Oh, cool. All right. That's what I do.
Okay, so let's move on to the 2x2 meeting that Carol Joy and myself and Matt will be attending on June the 20th. If anyone has any additional items that should be discussed, why don't you contact Carol Joy or myself so we can add it to the agenda. We are certainly going to discuss many items, and it's a freewheeling, unrecorded meeting so that both sides, if you want to look at it that way, have a freedom of expression. And we can put out things and they can put out things just to see what our feelings are or what our intentions are. So if any of the residents or board members have any items that they would like us to address, please contact Carol Joy or myself, and we will be looking into that. The other interesting fact is that the approval of the budget is going to finally occur. I think everyone's seen this. It was a flyer that the city of Novato sent to us So the public hearing for the budget is going to be on June the 14th at the City Hall, and we can attend in person or via Zoom. And then any addition or changes that may occur will be finally approved on the June 28th. And I suggest, since they are proposing that there is no rent increase, and I think we're all in favor of that, if any of us residents or board members feel to make a comment, I think it would be helpful to present ourselves at those meetings and let them know what our feelings are about the budget. And my feeling is, of course, that we've looked at it quite extensively, and we are very much interested in approving the budget as it is proposed without a tax increase, without a rent increase, and that we want to explore these opportunities to pay off the bank loan and therefore save ourselves a bit of money, which again, in the long run, will obviate any future needs for any rent increases. So keeping that in mind, I hope a few of the residents and board members show up at these meetings at the City of Nevada to express your point of view. Carol, do you want to say anything?
No, good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay. So having no other comments about the 2x2 meetings, let's go on to project planning. John Hanson and myself. John, you want to say something?
Yes, with respect to project planning, specifically planning, I'm kind of looking. I'm very concerned actually about our infrastructure. I know that that there has been a plan and it's probably had a few updates over the years, but things are happening very much faster than our plan has evolved. And so I would like to see some future proofing built into our infrastructure plan. Just looking at the trend of things in global warming, droughts, fire, and other things like our risks here with vandals and so forth. Some of the things that I have in mind include actually moving forward on the ADA projects and getting some of those behind us and removing those liabilities from off our shoulders, the liabilities for not having them there. And then I would like to see when we do the infrastructure, we need to take a hard look at our electric service. In the near future, as electric vehicles continue to grow and to dominate the mobility force here in Marin Valley, and electrification of people's homes as we add electric heat pumps and electric water heaters and basically all of the electric services and built-ins that we're going to have. As I estimate very roughly, our electrical needs are going to be roughly 3 times what they are right now. As we start giving up gas and going toward electrification, not initially, but certainly down the road, that is. So with that, and with the cost of electricity going up, and it's never going to go down really, I would like to look at the possibilities of not only solar for the clubhouse, but I would like to see solar for the entire solar possibilities or future building in for the future, solar for the entire community. Either grid addition solar, or ideally we could do a microgrid. It would take quite a bit, I think, in terms of funding to do that, either some of our own funding, or there's probably will be grant funding coming up that would assist us on that. Another thing that might press this along, I don't know where the city is on this and they're in their own planning, but right now there's a number of communities and neighborhoods throughout Marin that are doing reach codes. And because the state is sort of lagging behind a little bit in addressing the urgencies of global warming and the implications there for water and electrification and removing gas, that reach codes may push the river a little bit on moving things along here. So another thing there is water. We're basically two decades into a drought with mandates to improve and increase housing dramatically throughout Marin County, and without really much in the way of really what I would call serious views toward increasing our water. So I would like to look into the possibility then of drilling a well, having our own emergency water source here. And the other thing would be to plumb in with our infrastructure resources for recycled wastewater, where we could have that available for outdoor use, for watering our yards, watering our gardens, and basically everything but bathing and drinking and cooking. So, and then I think also as food costs go up, that we'll be much more inclined to build in a community garden. So those are the sort of things that I'm looking at for future expansions on the project planning. And again, the objective there is future-proofing our infrastructure. We're going to be spending millions on putting in infrastructure. I'd like to, pay it forward to future generations who live here, that won't have to be replaced anytime soon because of inadequacies in our planning now.
Well, a good time to broach these subjects will be at the coming 2x2. So our plan is to present to the city a package of items that we are wanting to consider and start a fire going in terms of getting them aware of what our desires are. I mean, they're very busy in their own programs, but we need to be able to show them what our needs are. And after we pay off the loan, and even at our current rent program, we're going to be able to save quite a bit of money each year, and we're going to have funds available to fuel this. And I think the important thing for the city and the staff to realize is that this isn't a for-profit organization, and as an enterprise under the laws of California, all funds that are generated within the enterprise are to be used for the maintenance and the development of that enterprise. So we have good ammunition in order to be able to go to them and explain to them what our needs are and how we need to plan to go forward. The fact that it's a non-for-profit really opens up a big doorway, in the sense that a for-profit organization, they would want somewhere between 10 and 15% a year profit on their invested capital. And since this is a nonprofit and an enterprise, those funds have been accumulating, which enabled us to pay off the loan that we used to purchase the park. But now those funds could be used to further upgrade our infrastructure, and also to do a better job in maintaining it, and also to take into account all these events that weren't really anticipated 5, 10 years ago. I mean, the drought has put a tremendous load on us, as well as overpopulation and security risks. All that needs to be looked forward and planned for. And we're going to bring this to the city in the 2x2 and start a program to get the ADA work moving, as well as our project plan moving. So any input anyone has, please contact John or myself.
Thanks, guys. I like that, what you're thinking and the progressive viewpoint. Good work.
Okay. So moving on, John, again, on MVES and Firewise.
Okay, yeah, Ambest and Firewise. Yeah, I've presented this every month, every month forever, actually, since we started Ambest under PAC. And usually what I don't say too much about COVID. And today I would like to say a little bit, just because, there just seems to be a tremendous amount of COVID fatigue and complacency, and what we're doing to protect ourselves and our community and our neighbors from getting this virus. And the main thing is that we are the most vulnerable demographic. People over the age 65 get the COVID frequently and die from it frequently as well. Most of the deaths are people over 65. Another thing is that COVID infections here in the county, they have sort of leveled off, and depending on exactly how you measure it, they may be actually reducing right now. But the point is, they're still with us, and there's new variants coming all the time. So I suggest that it is really no time to be complacent right now. We need to keep right on trucking with our due diligence on protecting ourselves. Another thing is that long COVID, or long haulers COVID, or however you want to call that, there's not a real good name for it. There's not a real good understanding of it, but there's a alarmingly high fraction of people, 20–25% of those who get COVID end up with long COVID. And along with that, along COVID, there is permanent damage from COVID infection, permanent damage to the heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, and occasionally some other organs as well. So again, no time to be complacent. We need to stay on top of this and avoid it as much as possible. As far as local mandates, Marin County, they're not looking toward reinforcing or replacing the mandates anytime soon. They are dependent upon the state then for what the county does. Other counties in the region do have mandates. Well, I think it was Alameda County does, none of the others do, but some are thinking of it or considering that right now too. So again, no time to be complacent. Watch what you're doing and watch where you go. So we strongly encourage then, maintain your vigilance with the COVID-19 virus, get your vaccinations, wear your mask when you're in public and in enclosed places or in crowded places outdoors, and try to keep your social distance.
John?
Yeah.
Underreporting, can you comment about underreporting and based on everyone having home tests and then not
Yeah,
really
well,
getting...
that's a problem with at least reported COVID cases, is that now there's so many home tests, people just don't report their results. They just say, well, okay, I better just hunker down for a couple of days, and that's about it. And some people don't even do that. And so yeah, so there's there's a lot of due diligence not being done by many people out there. So with that, again, not a time to sit idly by.
It appears that COVID has not gone away. In other words, all it's doing is mutating with new strains coming out. So it's going to be with us for a long, long time. And like you say, people are tired and want to get their lives back going. But it is a dangerous time because of these mutants. And it's also dangerous because of the demographic of this community.
That's right.
So we've got to be careful and should be continued careful. So watching, meetings to make sure most of it can be done either as we're doing it on Zoom or masked and social distancing. Please, it's important.
Okay, and now continuing with the MBES report, we had an evacuation exercise this last weekend, and we had a participation by about 20% of the park. That's the good news. 20%, 1 in 5 people participated and actually stayed around to learn a little bit more. And the vast majority of those people have their go bags and have done their diligence at home to prepare for the event of evacuation. Now, the flip side of that, the bad news is that 80% did not participate. Now, many of those people were away, but for one reason or another, it's always that way. There's always going to be a significant fraction during the day of people away from the park. But there's still a large fraction of people that did not participate. And to me, I'm concerned about that because that is a huge hazard all in itself. When we need to evacuate, we think, well, the fire's a hazard. Well, it is if we're prepared for it. If we are prepared and we are ready to evacuate, we have our information, we have our go bag together, everything is done, and we have exercised it in the process. The fire then is the hazard. Okay, but if we have not done our due diligence on evacuation, the evacuation itself becomes more of a hazard than the fire, because people, unless they have understood, studied it, and practiced it, don't know what to do and cause more of a problem than a solution. That is an elusive thing to many people. And I think that's why there are so many people that did not participate in the evacuation exercise. The thing is, there have been some recent evacuations locally. Just yesterday in San Rafael, last week or actually a couple of weeks ago, I think in Napa, there was an evacuation. These are from wildfires. And then last year, there was an evacuation in Marinwood for the wildfire that was there. So evacuations happen. We are very, very likely to have an evacuation going forward, if not this year and the years that follow. So I'm a little bit put off by people not participating in what we did, and hopefully they will the next time, and we'll be able to salvage the situation with the evacuation and keep this park safe.
Thank you, John.
That concludes my report. Oh, there's one more thing I'd like to say, and that is there is a power out, a planned power out tomorrow from 8 till 5. And we do have, MVES does have a protocol that we've just updated for power outs. We're going to exercise that tomorrow. So the clubhouse will be opened by us tomorrow at 8 a.m. when the power out may begin for some people. And we will also be putting out power strips we'll be putting out the message board and keep that updated for people. So all you have to do is come to the door and look in, and you'll see exactly what's going on, what the latest information is. And if the power failure has to go on, the power out has to go on later than 5 o'clock, fine. We'll stay there as long as it needs to be done. So that, I think that concludes all I have to say.
Any comments from board,
Anybody?
residents?
Anila?
Well, I think it would be quite marvelous if we had another robocall stating what you just said, John, because people aren't going to know that they can come to the clubhouse. If we could have a robocall that says, if you're in emergency, or however you want to phrase it, just so people know, and then have somebody sitting there with flyers about Invest and so on, just showing that Invest is taking care. Because otherwise everybody's just going to huddle back in their houses or leave.
Well, that's very true. And that's probably a good thing because, you know, this is a community for independent living. And we would really like to encourage people to live independently, which means people need to do their own preparedness and do their own precautions, do their own mitigations. It's nice if we have programs, as Matt mentioned, you know, to assist people that, you know, that don't have the wherewithal to do it otherwise. That's great. But on the flip side, people that do have the wherewithal need to read their echo, need to listen to their robocalls when they do come, and you know, need to stay up with what's going on in the community, and be that independent person rather than a dependent.
But how will anybody know that they can go up to the clubhouse for electricity unless you tell them?
This is a public meeting. It's open to everybody. And again, if people don't come to the meetings to get the information that's put out to the community frequently, MVEST meets every Monday. HOL meets every was first Wednesday, I think it is. And PAC meets every first Tuesday. Right now, there's a total of 13 participants here at the PAC meeting. And there's a lot of well, maybe 14 or 15, given there's 2 or 3 people sometimes watching the screen. But, you know, again, that's real complacency in the community to have so few residents here interested in what's going on in their own backyards. Hate to be the bearer of bad news and slap hands, but hey, got to do something here.
Vicky?
John, do you know of anyone specifically who has had an emergency situation and lived to tell about it, but was not prepared with a go bag that can speak to this?
Absolutely, yes.
Maybe that will get the whole idea over to people. I have a friend in Santa Rosa that happened to, and it was awful for her.
Well, we have links on our website to Fire Safe Marin reports by numerous residents. Some were prepared, some were not, and they kind of cover the spectrum. And these are people from Coffee Park and from Paradise and elsewhere. You know, people that caught in the blaze. And plus, there are many people, hundreds, unfortunately, that are not with us to explain what happened, why they were not prepared.
Can we get some of those reports into our echo?
Comments?
Because once again, people are not going to go on site to, you know, to the alert system and go read them. So can we just put them in front of them some way? This is what happened to me.
Would you be willing to make a Reader's Digest condensed version?
They already are. A lot of those, the URLs are there. It's all you have to do is put up the URL. And
oh no, I want some juicy stories to get people reading.
Oh
yes,
yeah, well,
definitely.
We can really put up a summary of those stories there. Yeah, that's a good possibility.
Yep. Or just say, hey guys, we're noticing that. Here's a couple stories about people who didn't. Draw your own conclusions. You're all grown-ups. Something like that.
All right.
I got my hand up. Can I say something? It's Ellen Jane.
Yes, go ahead, Ellen.
Oh, there you are.
Well, I was thinking about what Anila said about another robocall, and I kind of disagree with having another robocall. We've already had two. We got a letter in the mail, and it's sort of, and people are just sort of rolled, oh God, another call. And if they don't know enough, if their phones are not working, if they don't know enough to check out the clubhouse, I think some people will. They'll come down there thinking, what's going on, Matt? And but also we don't want 150 people showing up at the clubhouse either, because COVID.
I think you would be surprised how many people show up there anyway. And how many people perhaps didn't even get the message that there is
Right.
going to be a power shutoff.
Right.
So-
They'll just wander around and like, what's going on, Matt? No, they'll come to see Matt.
Right. Matt, you're coming tomorrow, aren't you, dear?
Yes, I am.
Get your fly swatter out.
We'll have, the air conditioning will be on, ice maker will be going. Anybody that needs a cooling place will be able to come up and relax.
Great.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Joe, do you have something to say?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, since the last experiences I've had with power outages, it takes about 2 hours for Comcast to go out.
Yep.
Now, that's because if it's not necessarily just a local outage, but an outage of the general area, then that means Comcast doesn't have power to their system. So my question is, what is the expected outage for the Wi-Fi and the Comcast and any other communication systems that are going to be effective? Because the generator or the utility system that you're talking about is only directly affecting the community here locally. So what is the expected outage in regards to Wi-Fi outage? There's a lot of people that are, on CPAP machines or whatever that are, communicating to hospitals and whatnot. So what is the answer on that? John?
Oh, you're asking me? Okay. Yeah, there's actually, I don't think Comcast will be affected on this, but to tell you the truth, I really don't know. This is all in the park. So this is a park-wide situation. And really that should apply as well to Verizon. So I don't think that would be a problem, but I'm interesting you're asking the question because don't you have your Starlink up yet?
Do you?
Yes.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting because I haven't had my system come in. But my question really is relevant to the fact that if Comcast is remotely online, and in the way I see it, they're supplying the system link through the network through coaxial cable. And that shouldn't affect them. But in the past, my experience has been, because the last time this green box went out, Comcast was out in about 2 hours after that. So, and the critical issue is that a lot of the people here in the park, either all their phones or their communication method is based on Wi-Fi because they don't have direct AT&T link. And it's important to let the residents know if they need to contact 911, where are they going to go to do that? And if we don't have a plan to back that up, and as we're talking about, well, there's a clubhouse facility, but that doesn't necessarily include a person that's passed out on the floor and has a fall down response system that's connected to a Wi-Fi and is basically out of communications. And Jay should know this because I've heard him talk about, communications and the effectiveness of our system here in the park. And basically, I'm just saying that we're all aware of the fact that we're going to be out for possibly 5 to 8. But if the Wi-Fi system is out for people who really need that communication ability, what's going to resolve that for them rather than trying to get to the park if they're in wheelchairs or whatever, or they're on respirators?
Vicky?
I understand calling 911 is no longer a very good idea. They get very busy. It's better to call 415-897-4361 if you have an emergency. That's local.
Yeah, and how many of the residents here know that?
I don't know. I'm offering it now
Well,
if
somebody
they're
should know
online.
Somebody should be.
I
you know,
learned it at a
advising the
meeting
residents
that
of-
was
as to
presented by John
accountability.
Hanson and MVest Group.
Well, I'm telling
too
you
long
that
ago.
it's not known to the residents of the park, and that's been one of my issues with the availability of information that's passed on to the residents, regardless of whether they're on email or regardless of whether they read it on a bulletin on the bulletin board. We should be aware of all that information, and I'm sorry if I sound concerned about it, but I am concerned about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
John Feld.
That information has been in the Echo twice at least, and we can take a count of water, but we can't make it drink.
So basically, we're just satisfied with that.
Well, what do you suggest to do about it?
Well, I would like some response back from all of us as residents that we have that information and have read it in the Echo. If we read the Echo, I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I read on a regular basis. So I pay attention to the meetings, I pay attention to the emails. And Carol, I appreciate you waving, but I didn't even get an agenda for this night's meeting. So I'm sorry.
Oh, that's your fault.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, Irma.
Joe,
I would like to say that the information about the power going off and that power supplies are available at the clubhouse is online. If you read it today, you probably won't be able to read it tomorrow, but that information is already online. I will add that there's ice and air conditioning
Thank
happening
you,
in
Irma. You're
the
very kind.
clubhouse.
That doesn't address the issue of being able to communicate out of the park on some sort of telecommunications basis in the case of an emergency, other than running to the clubhouse. I mean, if you're having a heart attack, and I'll be honest with you, that's going to be kind of hard to do if you're alone and you're not a resident that anybody really pays attention to. So I'm just bringing it up as an issue that I think is important. You know, not trying to criticize the PAC or anybody else. It's just a point that I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Well, thanks,
Thank you,
Joe.
Joe.
my hand's up. Ellen Jane.
Oh, okay. What else
Yeah.
do you have to say?
Well, Joe, if you don't get the agenda, you can go to marinvalley.net and the things are there. There's you can click through for the Zoom meeting. Oh, I don't know that the agenda is there, but yeah. And then
Usually
also,
it is.
what?
It usually is.
Yeah.
The agenda is posted at the clubhouse 72
Yeah.
hours before.
Well, I found it, and shame on you. I bring you your Echo. You read that thing.
Well, shame on you because you don't leave it where. I'm sorry, that's really a very moot issue. The point is that I'm on this meeting tonight because I know how to get on the meeting, and Carol has told me how to do that just to look for the old, sign-ons. So I know how to get onto a meeting. That's not the point. The
Okay.
point is that.
Thank you.
And one question
Well,
for
excuse me,
Vicky.
don't cut me off, JK. I'm just trying to make a point that it's an important issue, and yes, everybody has a comment. Thank you.
And Vicky, your comment about, is that number in our, the inside of our directories, the number you mentioned?
I don't know. I just learned it at one of the MVest meetings that was fairly recent this spring.
Okay, so can you repeat
But I
it?
think when the local police came to talk to us,
Yeah.
they suggested that we not waste our time calling 911 because it's just 911 is for so many different areas
Can you
outside of
repeat the
Marin as well. It's better to call our local Dovato team.
Can you repeat that number?
Sure, hold on. It's 415-897-4361.
Okay,
Who is that exactly?
that is in the front of our directories listed as police non-emergency, 897-4361.
Call them anyway, emergency or not. That's what we were
All right,
told.
well, okay, so that's how it's labeled. I'll.
Thank
correct.
you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
So one last point. If your Wi-Fi is down because Comcast is your Wi-Fi phone system, you're not going to have a way to call out of the park, okay? If you have AT&T, you're lucky that you might be able to use an AT&T line to call that number. Thank you. Bye.
And moving on to HOL, can you find John Feld again, Irma?
John? Can you go to the next one?
Sure. Is anyone representing Marvell here today?
No report from Marvell.
Okay. So we'll wait for a second for John Feld.
Okay, he's coming.
I'm sorry, I have to lose it.
And now going
I
to
apologize.
HOL.
Well, several things have happened at HOL. Our secretary has just resigned for health and travel reasons. And we have a new secretary who is Anne Lakota. And we have a new board member who is Mikhail Dancer. So we have the same numbers. We were going to have an election because Mikhail wanted to join, but Kamala just decided to leave at the same time, so we didn't need an election. There were no other candidates. We've had some successful events. Bark in the Park just happened recently. And
The dump run's going to be
the dump run is going to happen on July 31st? 30th, I beg your pardon.
Saturday.
And that will be in the Echo. And
I'm sorry, what is going to happen?
A dump run.
the dump run. Ed does a dump run every so often. We've also fixed up to get information so that people can get electronic recycling. They will come and pick it up from your house and take it to the centre in Belmarin Keys. And,
Good.
On Thursday.
And I think that's about it, really. Everything's going pretty smoothly, and nothing untoward is happening.
Oh, thank you, John. Any questions from the board? Residents?
Oh, Ellen Jane again. Yeah, I picked up one of those flyers in the boutique about the free e-waste pickups on Thursday. So whoever put them there, thank you. And I did call the number in fear that this was only for Novato waste people, because I know that Recology does a pickup for Novato residents. When they just schedule, you call them and they schedule, but we're not included in that because we're Marin Sanitary. So thanks for putting that out there.
Yeah, this was put out by Ed Collins, and
Okay.
it is for Nevada residents,
Yeah.
just like
I
Recycle does it
clarified
for
that,
San
yeah.
Rafael residents.
Thank you.
Okay, so there is no old business, there's no new business, and I'd like to have everyone sign on to the next board meeting, which will be July 5th at 6 p.m. Any problems with that?
Sounds good.
Okay, I move to adjourn.
Second, anyone?
I'll second that.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor of adjournment? Okay, enjoy New York, Steve, and look forward to seeing you back here.
Thanks, everybody.